Andrew. This is the end of the administrative year, and this is our last meeting for the Kiwanis Club of Kingston. But let me welcome everyone, and I welcome all our Kiwanians. Welcome to all our distinguished Kiwanians, our SLPs and guests. Welcome to our guest speaker, Professor Hubert Devonish. Happy to have you again with us, sir. Let me just mention really just some highlights of the past week. We're grateful that we were spared, let me say, the intensity of another tropical storm, despite, of course, the damages done to our roads. And I know for agriculture, the estimates will start coming in. But nevertheless, we have been spared the real intensity of the tropical storm. Just to mention that at our DCM held on Sunday, Kiwanis Club of Kingston was awarded the Lieutenant Governor's ribbon for the third quarter of this administrative year. On Saturday, September 24th, we had the changing of the guard. This was at the Police Officers Club. LGD Hugh Reid will succeed Lieutenant Governor Rosemary Henry, and this is on the 1st of October. Let me thank you, LG Rosie, for an excellent year, and welcome LGD Hugh as we continue to demonstrate the Kiwanis motto, which is serving the children of the world. We're at the point of introduction, so the official welcome and introduction will be done by President-designate Junior Stewart. Let's welcome President-designate Junior.
Good evening, LGED.
Good evening, sir.
How are you doing?
I am doing very well, thank you, sir. And I hope you're just as well, or even better.
I am. I'm not sure about better, but I am at least as well. A very good evening to all the Kiwanians and guests and friends online to this evening. And I'm just going to go right into it. And my duty is to welcome you all and to give you a chance to bring greetings tonight. As you have heard before, it's our last meeting of this year. And we certainly enjoy you being with us tonight. And we'll just start with those Kiwanians outside of Jamaica. Any Kiwanians online that are outside of Jamaica that would like to bring greetings at this point in time? Those Kiwanians outside of Jamaica that would like to bring greetings at this point in time. If not, we'll move to Division 25. Those Kiwanians from Division 25 that would like to bring greetings tonight. Go ahead and do so now, please.
Good evening, PD Junior.
Yes, good evening to you.
Bring you warm greetings from the Kiwanis Club of Hopewell. I'm not sure how much of us are online, but I just want to say that we are here and we are with you, and we always enjoy interclubbing with Kiwanis Club of Kingston.
Yeah.
Just a shout out to my good friend Willie, DLG Willie.
Yes.
And hope that we will have a wonderful meeting. Thank you.
Yes.
I'm DLG Joe.
DLG Joe, thank you.
Yes.
And thank you for coming.
You're welcome.
Good. We know you're going to enjoy this evening. Yes.
Yes.
Division 25.
Yeah, PD Junior, just to support DLG Joe. There
Right.
are four of us online from the Kiwanis Club of Hopewell. We have DLG Joe, one of our newest Kiwanian Cheryl. We have Secretary Daniel and IPP Nabil.
Beautiful, wonderful. Thank you
Yes.
all for coming. Any others from Division 25? Division 25. If not, we move to Division 24. Those from Division 24 that would like to bring greeting at this point in time. Division 24. If not, we'll move to Division 23 and we start with Division 23 West.
PD Junior,
Yeah, man.
good evening, everyone. I bring you
Evening.
greetings on behalf of President Frederick and the members of the Kiwanis Club of Sunshine City, Portmore. We have enjoyed interclubbing with you during this administrative year, and I'm sure we're going to continue next year. So far, I'm the only one that's not, but I know others are joining, anticipating a very good meeting with Prof. Thank you.
Thank you, DP. Thank you for coming.
Most welcome.
Yes. Any others from Division 23 West? Division 23 West. Division 23 East.
Good evening, PD Junior, fellow Kiwanians and guests. This is
Very
VP
good evening.
Tanisha from the Kiwanis Club of South St. Andrew. And it's just me from the club at this time, but I am hoping others will join and I look forward to a great meeting. Thank you.
Okay, we certainly welcome you and we thank you for coming. 23 East.
Good evening, PD Junior,
Good evening.
and all the other Kiwanians present. I bring you greetings from the Kiwanis Club of New Kingston.
Yes.
With me this evening are DLG Garthing and DS Sonia. My name is Linda Rose DS. Thanks for having us, and I wish you a very good meeting this evening.
Yeah, thank you, DS Linda, and thank you for coming. And you're certainly welcome at this club all the time.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Division 23 East. Division 23 Central, our own division. 23 Central.
Hi, good evening, PE Junior. How are
Oh,
you?
you are here with us.
I am. I wouldn't miss this last meeting for
nothing.
Yeah. So, as you know, I'm PED Eurydice from the Kiwanis Club of 23 Central, Surrey Online. And at this time, we have a growing delegation of just two of us, myself and LGD Desmond.
You're borrowing him again.
Yes, I'm going to borrow him again. But I'm pretty sure the delegation will grow as the night goes on. So thank you for the invite. We look forward to a wonderful meeting, informative and all that it has to offer. And yes, and to celebrate with you lot on your last hurrah for this administration and you coming in.
Don't remind me.
Well, I know you'll do well, and I'll be here. So you do well.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Any others from Division 23 Central? Division 23 Central. What about our SLP? Those SLP that would like to bring greetings at this time? SLP clubs that would like to bring greetings.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
President Kino.
Hi, how are you doing?
Doing quite well.
All right. President Kino here from the Michael University College Circle K Club. Currently, I am alone online. However, momentarily, I am expecting others to join me. And I'm looking forward to a very exciting end of the year meeting and a very riveting discussion. Thank you once again for having us.
And thank you for coming. We are looking forward to that as well. SLPs? Good. What about those other Kiwanians online that would like to bring greetings at this point in time? Kiwanians online, other Kiwanians that might have been online and didn't get a chance to do so earlier?
And their guest?
Yes, and their guest. Thank you. Those are the Kiwanians online and guests. If not, LG, ED, I'll pass back proceedings right over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, President Designate Junior.
Yes.
I am at the point of apologies, and as I apologized earlier for lateness for President Paul, he'll be here. So I still expect him to be with us. But before I ask for any other apologies, let us just observe that today is the first anniversary of the passing of DLG Willie's dear wife, Shirley.
Oh.
And DLG Willie, just to let you know so that your Kiwanis family is always here for you, here to support you, here to comfort you. So I know, but the moments would be sad, but nonetheless, we're here to bring you some comfort. Thank you.
Thank you, LGED Desmond. Much appreciated.
Right, sir. Do we have other apologies?
Yes, we have an apology from DLGE, Trevor Christian, and Treasurer Orville, Louis.
Thank you, DLG. All right. So now for recognition of birthdays and anniversaries. And I'll call on Vice President Designate Newton Ramdale. Newton, are you here? Am I seeing Newton?
I think he had told me he was gonna be a bit late because he had a meeting that he couldn't skip. So I doubt if he's on yet.
So we have apology for lateness. Yeah. All right. Well, may I ask, do we have persons with us celebrating birthdays or anniversaries? Not necessarily today, could have been last week and during the course of this week. Would you like to share with us so we can wish, and some of us who can sing will sing happy birthday? I know President Kino from Michael can sing.
Well, I shared an anniversary which kind of fell in. I'm trying to figure out which week it fell in, but it was on the 26th, so it would have been in last week.
Oh, all right. Happy anniversary, belatedly, DP Stewart. Do we have others sharing with us? Birthdays or anniversaries? You will convey our best wishes, of course, DP Stewart, to your dear wife. Thank you, sir.
Yes, thank you.
Do we have, if no other, do we have others sharing with us? No? Okay. Well, I'm at the point of Kiwanis education. And the topic is club charter suspension and revocation. And the source is Kiwanis international procedures, policies and procedures. When a club fails to pay its international or district financial obligations exceeding US $150 within 90 days after such amounts are due, The club shall be placed on charter suspended status. If payments are not made within 8 months after they become due, or 5 months after being placed on charter suspended status, the club charter shall be revoked at the next Kiwanis International Board meeting. The club's past and last president and secretary shall be notified by the executive director or designee of the pending charter revocation. And this will be 2 months prior to the charter revocation. If at any point in this process, prior to charter revocation date, the club pays its full indebtedness, the club shall then be returned to in good standing status and shall be so notified by the executive director or the designee. That's it for Kiwanis education. And I would say thank you, President, but President Paul isn't here. So we're now at the main event. And I'll call on distinguished President Stuart Spencer to introduce our guest speaker. Over to you, Stuart Spencer, DP Stuart.
Okay, thank you. First of all, are you hearing me?
I'm hearing you loud and clear.
Okay, I need to do another check though. I'm not sure if Avian Shaw is online. I need a confirmation.
I think I've seen him here, Director of Community Service. Yes, I think this is Avian Shaw. Director, he's signed in as Director of Community Service. Is that so, Avian?
Yes, my bad.
All right, good.
Okay, I didn't recognize that yet. All right, I just wanted to make sure because he's supposed to do the thank you. So I had to make sure he was online. Okay. Fellow Kiwanians and guests, it is indeed my pleasure to you're not seeing me though. Oh yes, you're seeing me. Right.
I'm seeing you.
Okay,
I'm seeing you.
Right. Let me just do one thing. Sorry.
We are seeing you.
1 second.
And you're on spotlight.
Okay, I think that's a little better.
Welcome back. Yes.
Thank you. Yes, fellow Kiwanians and guests, this evening we have a very distinguished presenter, and he's, there's a way you're not supposed to say doctor if you're gonna say professor emeritus. That's what I understand. So Hubert Devonish, professor emeritus. And so it's a very short introduction. So let me just get to it. Hubert Devonish is Guyanese. He is a professor emeritus in linguistics in the Department of Language, Linguistics, and Philosophy at the University of the West Indies, Mona campus, where he has taught and researched linguistics since 1979. He has researched and published in a number of areas related to Caribbean languages, with his best known work being the book Language and Liberation, Creole Language Politics in the Caribbean, Arawak Publications, 1986/2007. He's the first coordinator of the Jamaica Language Unit at UWI and a public advocate for the granting of official status to Caribbean Creole languages and for their formal use in education. And with that, I would ask you to open your mics and welcome our esteemed Professor Emeritus, Hubert Devonish. Welcome.
Okay, thank you very much for the very warm welcome. again, and I'm supposed to be really giving you an update on the language and education debate. And there's been a lot, or quite a bit, has taken place in the past couple of years. And what I'll do is kind of walk you through some of the, you know, the interventions. But I think the best way to do that is by looking at the Gleaner editorials, because we had a wash of them, starting with an editorial on the 2nd of January 2020. And it was entitled, "The PM Should Match Words on Patois with Policy." And that one said that the PM had, in December of the previous year, right, during the midst of the campaign on granting official status to Jamaica, that the Prime Minister said it was kind of inevitable that the language would become officialized at some point, so it was the big deal. And the editorial was saying, you can't just say that, you need to do something, get active on it. And the PM, I think, had also suggested whether there was nobody to do the necessary work, and the editorial said there was the Jamaican language unit. Then on the 15th of January, there was another editorial that said, "Don't mock Miss Lou's language." And again, it was pushing the line that it was very important to grant official status to respect the language and so on. Then, so you see, there was a concentration of editorials on the subject, followed on the 9th of March by another one that says, Justice Sykes, rules for patois. And the Chief Justice had made a public statement about how important it was to have software, artificial intelligence software, that could do transcriptions of the evidence provided and statements provided by people in court in the Jamaican language. That in fact, currently they were getting summaries, but for purposes of accuracy, that you needed software that would produce these transcripts quickly, because of course they needed, or the justice system needed, to recognize that the vast majority of people coming before it were in fact speakers of the Jamaican language. And so the editorial was saying, hey, right, again, more evidence, as it were, that the country needs to act on this matter. Then there was a bit of a lull, and then on the 5th of, I think, yes, it was May, the 30th of May this year, the action started again, and this was now in response to the Prime Minister making a statement at the opening of one of the call centers that, yes, of course, the language will at some point achieve some kind of status, but we need English. And we need to get on with English, and that it's English that is going to make the country prosperous. And so the editorial title was, of course, that was said, English, of course, but, and it again proceeded to make the point that you can't just simply pass it off like that, that action needed to be taken in the interest of the education system, the rights of people, and so on. Then there was the next day, there was another article, and this time that one was entitled Patois and the Liberation of English. And what it said was, and of course it was probably doing a bit of a play on the book that I wrote, Language and Liberation. And what it said was that for as long as we didn't recognize the Jamaican language as a language in its own right, that people were not going to, or the school system wasn't going to be effectively able to teach English, and that in fact you'd have a kind of system of a situation of paralysis where people not learning English, and at the same time they can't use their own language to transact business and to get about the business of life in their own country. And it was saying, look, you need to recognize that Jamaica is a bilingual country, and that both languages need to be given and recognized for what they are, as co-official, co-equal languages, and people will have the right to to both be educated in both languages and to transact official business, etc., etc. So the concept was that currently English was a prisoner because English could not be learned properly, and that was the argument put forward by the editor at the time. Now, the next one was, and because we're coming to a cluster of them, this was followed on the 19th of, I should mention that that particular article specifically targeted the Prime Minister and the Prime Minister's statement about, you know, it not being important. Then what we got was, and this is the one, I think is one of two exceptions to my list here, which is not a Gleaner article, but a newspaper, or not an editorial, but a newspaper article that says that advocates for pathway in schools disappointed. And this was a report about statements made that the Ecumenical Education Council, right? This seems to be a council of church schools across the denominations. And it was specifically in relation to a statement made by Mrs. Grace Baston, who is the principal of Campion. And on the absence of any reference to the language question in the National Commission of Education report, the thing known as the Patterson report that came out earlier this year. And she was pointing out that this was many representations were made to the commission, she said, on the language issue and the language and education issue, and yet there was no mention of it in the report. And so that was the statement that she was making, and that was run in the newspapers. And that was followed 5 days later, 24th of July, by an editorial that is entitled "Listening to Grace Baston." And that particular editorial pointed out that Grace Baston was the principal of one of the best schools in the country, etc. And yet she was talking about the importance of the Jamaican language in education, and that the heed need to be taken of what she was saying. That then was followed, I think, on the 10th of August by another statement from the editor saying the JTA must take a stand in the pathway debate. And again, the editor was driving home the same points about the importance of the Jamaican language in education, the weakness of the education system, the underperformance of children at CSEC and even PEP and so on, and the importance of their native language playing a role in their education. And was calling on the JTA to take a stand. Well, interestingly enough, on the 26th of this month, which is what now? It's yesterday? Yes, yesterday. There is now a headline in the same Gleaner that says, "Teach English as a Second Language." And this is a statement, the article covers an address made by the president of the JTA, the new president of the JTA, saying, and even though the headline says "Teach English as a Second Language," I'll quote what the president says, or what the article said the president said. That the Jamaica Teachers Association President LaSonia Harrison is supporting calls for Jamaican Creole to be accepted as the nation's official language, suggesting that English should be taught as a second language in schools. So that the editorial called on the JTA president to take a stand, and this new JTA president did take a stand. So we are seeing that this thing here is an ongoing debate and discussion. Now, somewhere around May of this year, in Parliament, Angela Brown-Burke, who is now the spokesperson, or was recently appointed as the opposition spokesperson on education, had the following to say in her contribution to the sectoral debate in the area of the sectoral debate on education. And it says under her there's a portion of her presentation in Parliament that is entitled universal literacy and numeracy. And it says, the opposition is on record calling for a comprehensive literacy program that includes teaching children to read and operate effectively in all dimensions of language and literacy. In this regard, we fully support the official position of UNESCO since 1953 that children should be educated in the language of the home, their native language. Hubert Devonish of the Department of Language Linguistics at UWI Mona has pointed to this having a positive effect on children's concept of self, their literacy, and broader communication skills, critical thinking, and creativity. Once these attributes are fully developed, children transfer easily to a foreign or non-native language. This is what, those are her words. And so we have a situation where at this particular junction, you could see that if we take the Gleaner editorial kind of stance as anything to go by, because of course, I've been in Jamaica for 40-something years and have been attacked by Gleaner editorials for decades. And what we now have is this changed situation where the said same editorials are now focusing on pushing and confronting the Prime Minister, specifically the Prime Minister, on the question of language, and particularly language and education. Now, we have an interesting problem, and I will now present it to you because whatever the Prime Minister says about language education policy, it obviously has to be subject to what is actually the official curriculum. So the government of Jamaica, or the Ministry of Education, introduced a new curriculum. There was a national curriculum introduced in the 1990s, and that was replaced in 2018 by a new curriculum called the National Standards Curriculum. Now, within curriculum, they have what they call attainment objectives. Those are the kind of, at the end of the year, the person is able to do this, that, the other. And then, so these are, I think that in this particular curriculum, it's called attainment goals, right? Sorry, attainment targets. And then there would be what they call the immediate objectives, i.e. what happens in a lesson. But the attainment goals in the National Standards Curriculum, just looking, for example, at grade 1, and I'm reading for you what those are, that in speaking and listening, communicate with confidence and competence for different purposes and audiences using, and I need you to listen, SJE, Standard Jamaican English, and JC, that is Jamaican Creole, appropriately and creatively. Then the next one is listen to, recall, understand other speakers' messages, whether implicit or explicit. And it then says, recognize, value, and make distinctions between, and note again, between home language, and in the National Standards Curriculum, they use home language as a synonym for the Jamaican language or Jamaican Creole. So they need to recognize, value, and make distinctions between the home language, Jamaican Creole, Jamaican, and SJE, Standard Jamaican English, to improve, acquire language and literacy competencies. And then the last one says, explain and comment on speakers' use of language, including use of SJE and JC, and their use of vocabulary, grammar, and other features. You're going to notice that everything I'm going to read to you going forward, whenever a language name is called, both languages are called, right? Now, we move reading and fluency recognition. Reading and fluency recognition makes no language, no specific language reference at all. It says read fluently and with appreciation, automatically recognize words, including sight words through repeated exposure and so on, establish a concept of print, and use of a range of word recognition, clues, etc., identifying new words, develop phonic awareness and the use of and use knowledge of letter sound correspondences in order to decode unfamiliar words. For that one, for fluency and recognition, there is no language mentioned at all. Therefore, in the context we are working with, the default is assumed that you are implying it's both languages. Then the next one says reading for meaning and enjoyment. Again, no language is named. It says read for meaning, fluency, enjoyment, using a variety of clues to identify information and ideas. Use deduction and inference to interpret information and ideas and to predict outcomes. And then the next one is identify and comment on the structure of text and on the language choices, grammar, and techniques that writers use. And then the other one says reflect and critically respond to literature and other texts on paper and on screen. Reading for information, again, but I'm saying whenever you, given what we have just seen, we get in the first one, which was the speaking and listening, we got specific reference to language. We are getting nothing, no specific reference to any particular language, and we are therefore left to assume that it's both because you're not calling a language name. Now, so for reading for information, we are told you do research activity, you should be able to research activities on issues and interests, generating ideas, exploring texts, identify and use text features to support navigation of text, blah, blah, blah. Then here comes the next one now, writing, okay? Again, you're told that the skills that you want to develop are ones, again, looking at the text layout, you write to narrate, but here's what happens now. Write to narrate, to persuade, and for a range of transactional purposes, and here's the bang, using SJE and JC appropriately and incorporating multimedia approaches to their writing. Notice that for writing, you are supposed to be able to write both languages. The next one says, use language and text forms appropriately and with imagination to create vibrant, engaging text. No reference to language, a specific language there. Write well-constructed paragraphs which have linking sentences between them and so on. And then the other one says now, use and adapt a range of sentence structures according to context, distinguishing between SJE and JC, that is Jamaican Creole. And then the final one says, write sentences which are grammatically accurate and correctly punctuated, listen, using SJE and JC appropriately. And right, and there's another one about punctuation, right? Now, that's the broader one, and but when you go into the specifics of the unit by unit elements, again, you get the same layout where by implication we are now stuck. I shouldn't say stuck, but we now find ourselves in a situation where the official policy is the curriculum. The National Standards Curriculum is on the website of the Ministry of Education. I mean, I got all of this off, right? And I will say to you that that I've looked at the requirements for the, I should explain that for the first 3 grades, I think, they have what they call an integrated curriculum. And I think it's in grade 4 going forward that they start to separate out specific subject matter. But what I can say to you is that for the integrated curriculum and for the language arts window is what they call it. There's a consistency of either saying English and SJE for any attainment target, or SJE, sorry, and JC is what they use, Jamaican Creole. or SJE in home language that is consistent right through. And I should say that I looked at the curriculum guides right up to grade 9, which is third form in high school. And it is consistent right through to grade 9. What I also did was a numbers count. How many times or what percentage of times do you get SJE being mentioned compared to JC? Just word count, sample word counts. And in the lower curriculum, in the ones I think for grade 1, it was I think it was 8 or 1%. So in other words, for every 100 mentions of SJE, there were 81 mentions of JC because of this tendency for them to mention both at the same time. There are 1 or 2 exercises and activities that are directed only at English, but for the most part, it's always the 2. And then for some of the higher grade levels, it goes up to about 85 JC items or mentions for every 100 SJ. So there's a variation between kind of 80%, 80 and 85% representation for SJE for JC relative to SJE. It is clear, that there is the intent, because what you call the attainment targets are what the child is supposed to be able to do at the end of the school year, at having gone through a course of study. Where the curriculum guide falls down is in the actual implementation. When you look at the activities that they set out and the specifics, what they call the specific objectives, they all focus on English. And so, for example, one exercise talks about learning to use the verb to be, the I am, you are stuff. Well, obviously, Jamaican doesn't, the verb system for Jamaican, or what we call the copula system, the equivalent of to be, is completely different from English. But there's no mention of that. And they talk about writing and sight words. But where is the element in the curriculum that is teaching them to read and write Jamaican? Absent. So somehow or other, according to this curriculum, children will magically develop literacy in Jamaican to match that for English. But in fact, the activities that would build them up to read and write their own language, those activities are not there in the curriculum. Now, so the good news is policy says that the objective of the education system right up to grade 9 is to produce children who are fluent in both English and Jamaican, who are literate in both, and who can carry out abstract thinking activities and express themselves in a sophisticated manner in both languages, both in speech and writing. That is what the official policy says. That's what is on the Ministry of Education website. The challenge we have, though, is that when the National Standards Curriculum was introduced, there was training. And they trained them quite a bit on the what they call the dialogic philosophy, Vygotsky, and so on, behind the new curriculum, the concept that teachers were supposed to be co-constructing knowledge with children, not didactically telling them what to do, that language was supposed to be used to do this thing. But it was, so they gave them this kind of abstract training of the philosophy behind the new, the National Standards Curriculum. But the practicality of operating bilingually in a curriculum that has attainment targets that are bilingual, to the best of my knowledge, no training took place. So you have no training taking place with the teachers to do what you say, or to achieve the attainment target of literacy and all of these skills that are supposed to be expressed in Jamaican alongside English. So you have no training. your specific lesson objectives and even your lesson examples that you give in the curriculum are not oriented towards helping teachers to or guiding them to produce lessons that are equivalent in Jamaican to the ones that are in English or the ones that focus on English as a language and its use and so on. So you've declared a grand policy, but you haven't put the means to achieve it in place, either at the level of the specific objectives of the curriculum or the training that is necessary. So you may say, well, so what do we have here? Well, my comment is that we have progress, massive progress. That we have an ambivalent prime minister, but ambivalent though he is, official education policy is that the products of the education system in Jamaica must be fully biliterate and bilingual, okay? And that, et cetera, and that they have to have the skills to do everything in both languages, and the concept being that they will learn those skills, the English version of those skills, by developing those skills, first of all, in their native language and then doing the transfer. That's what the thing says. But no training, no specific means of doing so means that in reality, they've continued to teach the way they've always taught. Because even from a philosophical point of view, the philosophy that they use, which is this concept, as I mentioned, of this dialogic approach, question and discovery procedures, getting children to work out critical thinking, to work out problems for themselves and so on. That requires use of the native language, because you're not going to be able to get children who are not English speakers to operate in English and to carry out those processes. So once you're not training the teachers to carry out those classroom activities in Jamaican, you're going to, some of what is going to happen is counterproductive. It's not going to work. Of course, there are many teachers who do their best in terms of interacting with the children in Jamaican, but they have no particular training in for example, dealing with concepts, say geometry concepts and so on. What terminology do you use when you are talking about squares and triangles and ovoids and polygons and so on and so forth? What are the Jamaican forms for it? Well, no, there are Jamaican forms for it that were developed in the bilingual education project that will work very well, but the teachers don't know them, right? So they'll do their best, but what they're doing is not going to be particularly effective. So it undermines the philosophy behind the new curriculum, which is supposed to have all these wonderful critical thinking components. So it can only work if it takes place and if education takes place heavily based on the native language of children. And since the teachers have not been trained to deliver it, and the actual exercises, classroom exercises and activities that would lead to the goals are oriented entirely towards English, then we're pretending, or at least the education system is pretending to be implementing an education system that encourages discovery learning and critical thinking. But in reality, it is going to be just as didactic as before for most children, since the main language of instruction and the main language for reading and writing is English. Because again, they say you must learn to read and write in Jamaica. Where are the textbooks in Jamaica? Where's the material to read in Jamaican? So not only are they not being taught to read and write Jamaican, there is no supporting material for them to exercise those skills on. So the claim that they're going to be fluent in reading and writing Jamaican at the end of the education system is nonsense, because nothing is being put in place to achieve that. So back again to my question, have we progressed? Obviously, we have progressed massively. I mean, after 40-something years, I'm here complaining that the means in the education system don't lead to the end. No, I fully agree with the end, but that had to be fought for over 40 years. The battle is won in terms of the end product? What do we want for the end product of the education system? And there's even an agreement, how do we want to get there? But then when it comes to the actual nitty-gritty of implementation, training, the production of support materials, etc., that is totally absent. And that's where the battle now, that's where the fight is going to be, to try to get the authorities. The curriculum is obviously going to have to be amended to put all of the support stuff in place for the Jamaican language. The teachers will need to be trained, and school books, textbooks, reading material produced to support literacy and reading and writing in the Jamaican language, because it's no point saying that they're going to come out literate and you don't have reading material for them to practice their literacy skills on, and you have not taught them to read and write the language. So at the end of it, we have an interesting situation. It's a kind of, we have won, but we're not quite there yet. So the argument continues, but I should say that in terms of a change in official policy, to use the words of the Prime Minister, argument done. The policy has changed, whatever he may be saying to the public and for a public audience. The reality is that on the Ministry of Education website, the National Standards Curriculum says what I just told you it says. And the main discussion from here on in, from my perspective, is not whether it is desirable or not. That done for. Argument done at that level, right? What we are talking about now is how to get there. That's the problem. Where are the resources? What is the training needed? How do we organize ourselves to get there? And the challenge is going to be that since the resources of the central government, the state, are not being put to achieve these goals, it's left to people like myself, the Jamaican Language Unit, and various groupings that are interested in moving forward on this, to try to put together the meager resources to make progress and hopefully over time embarrass the state that has the resources to get going and to do and to effectively put its money and its resources where its mouth is, and get this thing to happen, and not just have it kind of hanging in Never Never Land on paper, or I should say in digital format on the website, but not happening in the classroom, even while we pretend that we're implementing the National Standards Curriculum. So that's where the debate is right now. That's the update. As I said, the desirability of this thing, argument done. It is how to get there that is the action right now. And I think that pretty much sums it up. So thanks very much for listening to me.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Devonish. DP Stewart, I'll come to you in a while. Let me welcome our Lieutenant Governor Rosemary Henry. Welcome, LG. Welcome, President Paul. Nice to have you, sir. And
thank you very much, LG Desmond.
And I'll hand over to
LG.
I'll hand over to you now, President Paul.
Yes, thank you so very much, LGEB Desmond, for presiding over the meeting at its start. I know you had informed our participants that I had a work scheduled to complete, which I have managed to do so, and the Minister of Tourism is on his way to New York and then en route to Jamaica. At this time, I will ask if there are any questions for our guest speaker, Professor. Are there any questions?
Hubert Devonish.
Yes.
President Paul, I'd like to just come in here at this point.
Okay then.
Professor Devonish,
yes, sir.
I think we would, we probably would appreciate some examples. I know you had spoken about, in a different forum, about other countries in the Caribbean where this particular transition took place in terms of teaching in their native language, in their home language, as you refer to it. and what the results were in terms of passes at CXC afterwards. I can't remember if it's Curacao or Aruba or something, but you could tell us which ones. And I'd also appreciate maybe an example. Remember when you're speaking about the triangles, or how would you convert that to Jamaican? You maybe you could give us an example in that particular sphere, just those two areas. Thank you.
Right. The first one, the obvious examples, the obvious success stories are Aruba and Curacao, particularly Curacao. Curacao was very radical. They introduced Papiamento, but as you know, Aruba and Curacao are overseas territories of the Netherlands, right? The Kingdom of the Netherlands, and they are autonomous parts of the Kingdom of the Netherlands. So they have a kind of local self-government arrangement. They, in the case of Curacao, 30 years ago, declared that Papiamento to be an official language in Curacao alongside Dutch, and for sure, and I believe English, probably English, but for sure alongside Dutch. But at the same time, for education, they declared Papiamento to be the language of education, that you come to school and you learn in Papiamento, you learn literacy in Papiamento. And they would then introduce Dutch and English as foreign languages at, at particular, I think, like the Dutch comes in, I think, at grade 2 or 3. So the entire preschool and the first 2 years or so of the primary cycle are entirely in Papiamento. They bring in Dutch, and then they bring in English a year or 2 later, and eventually Spanish. Anybody who has had the opportunity to either go to Curacao or to meet people from Curacao would know that they are fluently multilingual, embarrassingly so. So while I am struggling in my English the best way I can, they pretty much say, well, which language? I've been in a situation where somebody came to give a talk, and he looked around and he says, which language do you want me to give the talk in? Right? I could do it in Dutch, I could do it in French, I could do it, sorry, not French, Dutch, Spanish, Papiamento, English. Which one do you want? It depends on which is the majority language here, right? So that's the linguistic reality of Curacao and of Aruba. Aruba has gone the route of making it multilingual from the beginning. You see, Curacao has said Papiamento is the mother tongue, and that goes right through to university. So right up to university level, Papiamento is the medium of instruction, okay? And they've developed all the technical terminology for linguistics and mathematics and so on, the relevant handbooks and so on. Which brings me now to, how you teach mathematics in Jamaica. Right. Now, the joke is that these fancy English words, right, are mystifications because they are borrowed from Latin. Your simple example, triangle. Yeah, but anybody who knows some Latin and things know that it means 3 angles. That's what it means, right? So, but it's totally not transparent to anybody. I pointed something, I said, name triangle, right? It is just an arbitrary name unless you know Latin. When we were doing the bilingual education project, we named the triangle 3-side shape, which ain't no different from the Latin. It is just that it's transparent, and you understand, right? If you name a 3-side shape, right? It got 3 sides, right? Just like how it got triangle. Okay, good. One example. They're mystifying the poor people pick me there by showing them a shape and set name ovoid, O-V-O-I-D. But if you know any Latin again, you know this ovum thing, business. It means egg. But it's just egg in Latin. Ovoid means shaped like a damn egg. So why the hell you don't call it egg shape, which is what we did? And so on, right? Square box shape, and so on. So the point then is that you, by developing these terminologies that that will demystify, in any case, the fancy things. And you can see when you don't then have to worry about remembering ovoid for a shape or triangle for a shape, right? All right, and so on. A plenty-side shape would be like a polygon and so on, right? So you know that really what's happening is that you're identifying shapes through words which count the number of sides. 4-side would be, you know, and 5-side, etc., etc. So you know that's what it's working with. And as I said, in the case of triangle, it's doing the same thing in Latin. We don't know, right? And we therefore think it's some. So triangle is not mysterious. It's just a three-side shape, and a square is not mysterious but a back shape, right? And we do that kind of thing. So that's what we did, and of course it worked, because you can then now transfer from egg shape to ovoid if you want to be fancy in English and stuff like that. But you already have the concept drilled into children's heads about a label for a shape that makes sense to them. So that's the kind of learning. And I should mention that when you do that, it created some interesting problems for teachers, because the teachers no longer had the mystery, right, of these fancy terms. The children could participate. So classes, mathematics classes in Jamaica were far more interactive than the ones in English. So what would happen is that the teachers would teach the same lesson or class in Jamaican and then repeat it later on in English at a point where they kind of have the basic concepts. But the Jamaican classes were really interactive, but that's what you want when you teach mathematics, right? You want people to understand and to interact. The other part of it too was the teachers opted, there was a particular male teacher who would be normal didactic kind of know-all teacher when he taught in English. But when he taught, when he was doing the Jamaican classes, he sat. So he was at the level of the children. And the next thing he did, he never made statements, he asked questions all the time. And so the democratizing nature of the language shift meant that the quality of education improved. And it would, when they do it, they will achieve the objectives of the national standards curriculum that they say they want to achieve. So yeah, those are practical examples.
Thank you very much. The floor is open.
Hello, Stuart. This is Marilyn Bennett. How are you?
Hi, go ahead.
Professor, I'd like to ask Professor Devonish a question. Thank you for this enlightening discussion, sir. But tell me, is the Jamaican language homogeneous? I mean, everybody in all 14 parishes that speak this language, are all the words the same?
Is it required that all the words are supposed to be the same before you could use it in education? If so, English cannot be used in education.
Well, the truth is, I really find it so difficult sometimes to listen to people from Clarendon or Manchester, different places. But I mean, it could be an ignorant perspective. But the truth is, I really want to know, because I find this very, very interesting. And no, I don't have a position in terms of us moving towards the position you've stated, but I just wanted to know, because I do know that sometimes I find them people who speak the language a little difficult to follow in some instances. So maybe you could help me. But
I find people who speak Scottish Standard English very difficult to follow. It doesn't prevent me from being educated in English, right? Okay. And if you have any experience of the United Kingdom at all, I studied in Yorkshire, and the cleaning lady used to come in and talk to me, and all I would say, huh? Yeah, ha ha. I don't understand one tail of what she's saying. So if the requirement for a language to be used in education is that everybody is able to understand everybody perfectly who speak that language, then neither French, Spanish, nor English has any role in an education system.
Absolutely, and I understand that kind of reasoning, sir. But what I'm wondering, which one would we teach would we get together to teach in?
Well, you teach what the teachers and children understand. The reality is that just as accents differ, I have been taught by people from the United States who talk English very different from me, but it didn't, and I used to have to try to listen sometimes because they would say things I didn't understand. I've been taught by people from Britain. I've been taught by people from Nigeria. So the realities of accent differences and it's just a reality of language. So there's no which one we teach. There's a standard writing system for Jamaican, and the Jamaican is far more, the St. Elizabeth variety is far more similar to the variety in Kingston than is the varieties of English in North and Southern England, as an example, right? The English dialects have had a long time to become quite different. And so if they cope, we can as well. In any case, though, this is not a matter, I mean, we can discuss it and say, should we or should we not? But that's not I'm saying it is already policy. It's done. It's a done deal. It's part of the official policy because these have been debated for 50 years. This is not anything new, right? I mean, Dennis Craig, this goes back to the 60s and the 70s, and there's been a gradual recognition that it has to be the way that the Ministry of Education now says it has to be. And the issues of differences of words and pronunciations, yeah, so what? Big deal. We've been coping with it in English. Nigerian teachers and Scottish people have been coming here, and we deal with them. So a child from St. Elizabeth or somebody who comes from St. Elizabeth and comes to Kingston and they're having a bit of an accent problem. So what? They will just figure it out. Human beings do that.
Thank you.
Okay, who would like to be next?
Yes, Professor.
Yes, sir.
Junior. I was thinking on the same basis of the person before, but I understand exactly what you are saying. But do we have a written structure of the Jamaican language? Because the truth is, just looking at patois sometimes and trying to read it is very difficult at this point. Do we have a structure now that we could use readily? I understand what you have been saying, that the difference between accent and dialect and so on and so forth. But do we have a structure that we could use now, for example, to teach in Jamaican language?
Sure. In 1961,
yes.
Frederick Cassidy, who was a Jamaican linguist, but he has been living in the United States a very long time, he wrote a book called Jamaica Talk and developed a standard writing system for Jamaican then. But it doesn't follow that because you're literate in English and you speak Jamaican that you can read and write it. Because what people do is that they adapt or try to use the English writing system to write Jamaican, which is disastrous because the English writing system is a mess for English.
Yes.
How are you going to apply it to something else, right? So that when you try to use, for example, the English writing system to, you got, the usual stuff, the English T-O-U-G-H is tough.
Yes.
T-H-R-O-U-G-H is through, and T-R-O-U-G-H is trough, and so on.
Yes.
And when you try to take that now and apply it to Jamaican, it's a mess. So there is a standard writing system, but you will have to learn it.
Okay.
Now, you haven't been taught to learn it. Children in England don't know to read and write English until they go to school and they're taught it. So the assumption that because you speak Jamaican and that you're literate in English, that you can read and write Jamaican effectively, it's not valid. Okay. So the bilingual education project that ran between 2004 and 2008, they had the school books in Jamaican. We translated the text, the existing Ministry of Education text, into Jamaican. We had an alphabet chart. They were taught to read. The teachers, first of all, had to be taught the alphabet, the Jamaican alphabet, and the letter sound equivalents. The children learned those children are now adults, and they grew up to be quite decent Jamaicans in spite of their unusual educational background. So the answer is that the writing system existed since '61. The materials, the teaching materials, even we had alphabet cards and charts and all kinds of stuff that would stimulate literacy. We actually made a presentation of that material to the Ministry of Education in 2010. They didn't do anything with it. But now is the time really for us to revive this stuff. The teachers, there's going to have to be a large scale retraining of teachers to function as bilingual teachers, not this kind of mishmash of pretending that English is the only language in the country and so on. So there's a lot of work to be done, and the adults themselves will need education. People like yourself, you will need to be taught to read and write it, but it's not a big deal because the writing system, unlike if anybody who can become literate in English with all of the mess in the English writing system will find it very easy to read and write Jamaican, because in Jamaican, one letter or one combination of letters always represents the same sound. Okay. Therefore, it's going to be easier. Yes. Right? So if you're bright enough to grasp the English writing system, you have no fear of being able to read and write Jamaican. But you know what's going to happen. The page will look different. It's just like if you pick up a page of Spanish or French, apart from the words themselves, they just look different. You know what the English word looks like. You know, you could pick up, for example, a page of English and spot the one word there that is misspelled because you just look around. That's because of years of practice. So naturally, when you get presented with a page of Jamaican, even if you already know the sound letter correspondence, this is going to take a time for your eye to get accustomed to what words look like in Jamaican as opposed to English and so on. So it's going to be a learning process, but it has to be done, and it will be done.
Yes, I do appreciate that.
Okay. Are there no more questions?
Yes, Professor Devonish, I have a question. I have something to say to you. Now, I find what you said so interesting because I remember because I teach German and I teach Spanish, and I was teaching the Jamaican to do the German exam. And Professor, I realized that if I was to speak in Patois and relate it in German, the Jamaican was learning much faster than if I were to even relate it in English. Because when she said to me that German sound like Patois, and I said, of course. And I started to pick out words. And for example, we say him, H-I-M, but in German you have I-H-M. And so she got so excited about it, and she, she did well because I could relate it to Patois and not English at all. So, and she passed, so what you're saying was I find it very interesting and very interesting.
Well, the quickest example too, in the case of Spanish, right? You have the ser, estar difference, the difference between having a quality and being located in a place. So you're right, and as well, so that but Jamaican makes the distinction. The Jamaican has a three-way distinction between, for example, if you're saying he is a man, right? Or he is a doctor, as an example. So you use a. So that's what we call an equational copula. It's saying x equal y. But then if you want to say imtal, right? There's nothing there, right? Because that's a quality. It's not x equals. So the equational thing, the equational copula is a. Then the locational copula, which would be equivalent to the Spanish estar, all right, would be embedded. Okay, so de, emdea, etc. But we notice that you would have to say in English, he is a man, he is here, he is nice. But in Jamaican, you've got to distinguish between the three. Equational, locational, and the the attributive, the quality thing. So that for languages like Spanish that have a distinction between the locational copula and the equational one, it's much easier to move from Jamaican to Spanish than move via English, because English is a dumb language and it does not make the distinction.
Right.
Very interesting.
We're constantly told that English is so sophisticated and makes distinctions, blah, 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 blah. That's not true. I mean, it is true that for many Jamaicans, for example, you wouldn't when you say him, it could mean he or she, right?
Right.
So it doesn't make a gender distinction, but so that's true for many, many languages of the world, right? But on the other hand, Jamaican makes distinctions on the verb that English doesn't. So when the curriculum says teach your children about the verb to be, the complication in the English verb to be is depending on the subject. You know, I am, you are, he, she, or it is.
Right.
But the complication in Jamaican is the conceptual thing. Is it a quality? Is it a location? Or is it an equational? So every language have their own complications you have to deal with. So the concept of having a bilingual approach to education is that it creates a kind of mental flexibility that facilitates both the learning of other languages and, more generally, the understanding of concepts, because you're now realizing that different languages can break up the world in different ways. So there are a lot of advantages to this, to moving to an education system which is bilingual and which includes the native language of the child.
Okay, thank you very much.
Professor
Just
Devonish.
one.
Oh, go ahead, Eric.
Yes, my coming late to this meeting was because of another meeting, and it is my loss. What the little I've heard, Professor, I am intrigued, because I'm one of those who, as I pick up a page, I see a wrong spelling, because I'm getting on nearer to the fourth, what do you call it, to 80. So you know how many years of English I have been reading. And I'm not a great reader, but I have always sort of satisfied myself having read and watched My Fair Lady, because that explains the various things in the English language that makes it so complicated. An Englishman's way of speaking absolutely classifies him. So a Jamaican's way of speaking also classifies him. St. Elizabeth, hibby gibby, that was one of the first words I learned from a boy. Remember Stu Estrie?
Yeah, man, I remember Estrie.
So he said, hibby gimme, and we didn't understand what he meant. And then we heard him, and we could learn some of these things. But I did not think of it as something to aspire to. And that's where now the relearning that I hear you talking about will be quite a challenge, but maybe I should enjoy that now I could properly say I'm bilingual, because they were going to call our language one. So
well, you are bilingual.
Yes, I am, but I don't want to admit it because it's not something one was aspiring to. But I am so sorry I missed most of what you said, but that's not your fault. And I will try to listen to some more if the recording is done. Thank you very much, sir.
It is being recorded there. Yeah, Professor Devonish, there's one little thing I want to get in. There's a tendency to think that this issue of the language and what we teach is a third world phenomenon, as if it is it's only we backward people who have this issue, and then we're struggling to learn English. But could you give us, could you comment on, there are European countries that are well developed, who their language is not well, spoken to a significant extent outside of their country, but which is their first language. And they learn, well, I'm thinking of Finland, for example, where they learn Swiss and English as second languages. Could you say anything about a country like Finland, which is certainly not third world by the way we define it, and how they have dealt with their language situation.
Right. Well, since you've brought in Finland, what's happened. I'm going to make a connection in that Jamaica has decided to do an international exam called PISA, P-I-S-A. It's a test of how competent children are at age 14 in literacy, in mathematics, and so on. Now, the PISA, those performances, performance at that test, I think they do it in cycles every 3 years or something at the start. Those are used to rank education systems internationally. Well, you would know that Finland is way up the top. But a better example than Finland is next door, Estonia. There are only 1.2 million Estonians. But Estonia is the top European country in the PISA rankings for mathematics as well as for language arts. But of course, people in Finland and Estonia don't do the test in English. But what's going to happen is that when they administer the test in Jamaica, they're going to administer it in English. Result, Jamaica is going to do very badly because you're not, in fact, you're not comparing like with like. Jamaica is pretending to be an English-speaking country, right? Running its education system in English, when in fact, the language that they should be teaching their mathematics in and understanding their abstractions in is Jamaican. So you're creating a task for yourself of both understanding difficult concepts and understanding them or getting them in a foreign language. So you tie your hand, you must do bad, right? So the answer is, of course, that the high performance of countries like Finland and Estonia in the international education rankings, those performances are in Estonian and Finnish, not in English. So that even though the Estonians and the Finns do know some English, they don't take the test in English. They don't learn them. They're not evaluating their mathematics in English, their abstract thinking in English. We are doing it in English. Therefore, of course, the education system. So not only are we doing a bad job of teaching, even when we enter the educational stakes internationally, we are handicapped, and we're going to end up looking worse than we really are, because the tests are going to be administered in a foreign language for most children. And so so when the PISA results and the rankings come out, and because they'll come out in about in months or a year, I think the tests were postponed because of COVID. But when those rankings come out and Jamaica realizes that there's going to be a whole noise about how far down Jamaica is, well, of course it must be far down, because you're not, in fact, running on all fours with these other people, right? Them have 2 foot and you running on one, and you expect to do as well as them. So in the end, both the real performance and learning is inhibited, and as well, the evaluation of what you know is inhibited, because even the little that you know can come out in a test because they test you in the wrong language. So that's our problem.
PP, can I just make a quick comment?
Go ahead.
Professor, I'm very happy I heard you today, because I'm going to tell you a little story. I too studied in England, and some of my best friends were from East Africa. And one of the things, they always laugh at me, because they all spoke Swahili and all these things. And said, boy, you can't, you don't even have a language. I was the laughing stock of the group, because they all spoke different languages, their home language. And I only, at that time, felt I only knew English, So I think this will be a big step forward. But I think the major problem, though, is to get people to appreciate what you have said. I don't think it's widely known in Jamaica, and I think there needs to be an awareness, a conversion really, to accepting and to understanding what is really happening, you know? Because if not, people will feel that they are inferior.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, I felt after a while with this cycling and so on that I was really deficient, you know. I don't beat them in the school thing. I mean, you know. But I think I was happy to hear what you said. You know, and it really started me thinking, because I wasn't aware of a lot, I must confess, of what was happening, you know. And I think a lot of people are like me, especially seniors, you know.
Yes.
Because they are grounded in the old system, you know.
Yeah.
And like technology, it's harder to learn when you get
Not
out.
young.
Yes.
We're not
Not young.
So again, Prof.
I met that sort of problem when I went to Malawi for a short holiday while I was in England. And when they asked me what's my native language, I felt embarrassed too. Because I sheepishly said English. And then I said, of course we have a dialect. That means I didn't even recognize, and hardly am now being taught that it's not a dialect, it's a language. But believe me, it is hard. It is hard for me to accept, but I will get there with a few years left.
It's a
Thank
process.
you very much.
You'll be surprised. You'd be surprised. You know how changes are. Just 2.5 years ago, us having a Zoom meeting would have been totally foreign, and it's now quite natural.
Yes.
We change. You'd be surprised how even the old people like us, we adapt. We eventually adapt. Yeah.
Not as easily, but we will.
Probably easier than you think.
Easier than you think, right? Because, Professor, I remember even going to school. You know the subject area, right? But maybe what you don't know so well is the language. So what happens? You spend a lot of time trying to figure out how to put it correctly. So I understand exactly what you're saying. If we're comfortable with the language, then you wouldn't have to spend any time at all trying to figure it out when you're doing mathematics, for example, or some other subjects. Yes, it will just come naturally. You tend to get better grades because you wouldn't have to be thinking about the language.
How to say it, yes, true.
Yes, how to say it.
One thing I should throw in, I was never very good at knowing about what is a past participle or what is a, I was never good at that. I mean, I think I spoke good English, but don't ask me those kind of things. So I would like to ask you, Professor, there's this structure that we have, uno, alla uno, which means, like you plural or something. What structure, what is that in terms of, if we're gonna give these things names, what does uno and alla uno, what is that in, how you define what that is?
And dead and stiff stone dead.
That's a little different.
Yeah, so English is a deficient language. It doesn't distinguish between you singular and you plural. And all the Caribbean Creoles do. Some of them using unu, which is a loan word from Igbo, right? And the others, like where I come from in Ghana, we say ayo. It's from aliu, right? But again, we distinguish between you singular and you plural. Alia or unu, right? And so the whole unu now is a kind of inclusive plural, you plural. So
whole unu, yes.
Uno. You got a you plural and an inclusive one because the al unu, right? Or the whole unu, right?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So
but I'm glad you put it that way, Prof. English is a deficient language because it does not distinguish. It uses you for you plural and you singular. It's deficient.
It's probably deficient from another aspect. It's probably deficient from another aspect because most of the words come from other languages.
Well, then that's true for every
all language, for every language.
But the thing is, the real point is that languages are simple in some areas and complicated in others, but they don't. So English is complicated. English is compared to German, English is a very simple language because it's lost all its Germanic inflections except third person singular. You know, in other words, I run, you run, he, she, or it runs. Right. It's only the third person that you add something on. Everything else is a thing. But if you know any other languages, whether it be German or Latin, right, or even French to some extent and Spanish, you know there are many, many more inflectional endings. So English has already simplified the system in that area, but it's still more complicated than Jamaican because Jamaican has no subject-verb agreement at all, right? But then on the other hand, Jamaican has a difference between the forms of the verb to be. For English, the English has to be, and it uses it for everything. Jamaican has a three-way split, so it's complicated there. So what you find is that languages are complicated in some areas and simple in others. And if I want to be snobbish, I can come along and say, oh, but Jamaican is foolishness. It doesn't have subject-verb agreement. And I turn around and say, but then English is stupid because it don't have a split between the various meanings of the verb to be. So I'm just jocularly saying English is a simple language because that is the claim that is made against Jamaican, that it has no rules and it's too simple. But of course, it's got its own complexities. And you just have to, when you learn a language, you have to get into that language, deal with the complexities and the simplicities and run along with it. Languages are language. They're all equally able to do the job, but they do the job differently.
Professor Devonish, I'd like to make a comment. When President Designate Jr. said he was trying to relate in mathematics, I would like to make the point that mathematics has a language by itself. Yeah. And maybe that's why a lot of the youngsters who don't do well in maths, that's the reason. And those who do well in maths have learned the language of maths, and that's why they do well. But in addition to that, when the king addressed the Welsh Parliament recently, he spoke to them in their language. I don't know how much that was noted worldwide, but I picked it up during his address to the Welsh language recently, and they were very happy for that.
Yeah, well, because as you have noted, Welsh is one of Wales is officially bilingual and requires that all government communication take place in two languages, Welsh and English. So here are we wondering and worrying about how people talk in St. Elizabeth. And within Her Majesty's kingdom, or kingdom, but one of the nations within the United Kingdom, is actually bilingual.
Bilingual.
Bilingual, officially bilingual.
Officially.
In English and Welsh, which is why the new King of Wales proceeded to address them in their national language. Okay. So these are some of the language politics issues that we think we know and we don't know, right? Because in the case of Scotland, right, you've got Scottish Gaelic in the outlying islands, but there is what is called Lallans or Scots. Now there's a Scots language or Scotch language, right, which is essentially a form of English, but a different form of English from the one that we know. And it has its own, we all know Old Lang Syne and Burns, Robert Burns. It is that dialect of English, right, that Scottish poetry and the Kingdom of Scotland actually operated in before Elizabeth I knocked off her sister's head and seized Scotland. The result is that the Scottish language, they call Scotch, that particular variety of English, didn't continue to have high status and prestige. But now the Scottish nationalists are trying to reintroduce or to raise the status of Scotch or Scots, along with Gaelic. Gaelic is a completely different language family, but in the case of Scots, it's a form of English, but it's a competing dialect of English, which the Scots are demanding be recognized as their language as well. So there are a whole heap of complexities in the countries that we think we know about, but we actually don't know that much about.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Well, over to you, President
Thank
Paul.
you. Yes, thank you very much, DP Stewart and Professor Devonish. I mean, this was a very educational meeting. I learned so much by listening to the etymology of the English language and all those other languages and derivatives that that form part of our culture. But I'll now call on Chairman Designate Avion to do the vote of thanks.
Yes, thank you, President Paul.
Chairman Designate Avion.
Yes, are you hearing me?
Yes,
Yes,
we are.
we are.
Yes, we're hearing it clearly.
All right. No, good evening, everyone. I've been honored with the opportunity to do the vote of thanks on behalf of the Kiwanis School of Kingston family. Now, Professor Devonish, we are indeed grateful for your contribution. Therefore, I'd like to thank you for your wonderful, enlightening, and informative presentation. But most of all, we'd like to thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to be with us and sharing, right? Which I'm sure most of us enjoyed. I'd like to also extend this warm thanks to the rest of the. Are you guys hearing me?
Yes, we are.
Yes, we're hearing you. We're hearing you. Go ahead.
To the rest of the Kiwanis families, brothers and sisters, designates, guests, warm thank you, and we look forward to your continued support and participation. Thank you, and please do enjoy the rest of the evening.
Okay, thank you very much.
And there is a certificate of appreciation, which
Thank you very
I
much.
think is being displayed.
Yes,
And
thank you.
I will make every effort to get it to you. Thank you
Thank
very much again.
Yeah,
Okay.
man. Thanks very much. Bye.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Chairman Designate Avion. But before we move on to our Sergeant at Arms, I'm going to call on Lieutenant Governor Rosemary to say a few words at this point. LG Rosie, over to you.
Thank you so much, President Paul. Good evening.
Good evening.
Distinguished Kiwanians, fellow Kiwanians and guests, good evening, everyone. It is indeed my pleasure to be here this evening and to have the opportunity to listen to the interesting conversation that just went on. You know, in my view, I believe every country speaks two languages. Every nation has two languages that they embrace. One is just internal and the other one external. But or you appreciate each one of them. I know that one of the things that I love being able to do is speak my Jamaican language, my patois, when I'm among my own Jamaicans. It makes me feel like I am home wherever I am. So I enjoy doing that. But otherwise, of course, we're out in the world, so we have to speak the English language. But as Casey Kingston wind down, it is indeed my pleasure to address you one more time. I know this is President Paul's last meeting, and as he closed out the year, and I'm happy to have this opportunity to congratulate each of you, all of you, on an excellent, excellent year of service, and in particular, your commitment to our SLP and creating growth in Kiwanis. You did that not only by sharing your K, but also with the creation of our newest club in the division, KC Nation Builders. And you did this by using former SLP members, mainly former SLP members, as charter members that allow our SLPs another pathway into Kiwanis. And that is just an excellent thing to do. President Paul, you have certainly led well, and I congratulate you on the achievements of the club for this year. Your club has certainly exceeded my expectation. I would never have thought that the support and the work that was done would have been so much. And my heart is just full when I look back at all that has been done. I thank each and every one of you.
for all that has been done for our children, for the changes, the impact you have made throughout this year. Tonight we sit not on the ending of a year, but really on the edge of the opening of another chapter in our Kiwanis journey. Our children continue to need us. Our world continue to need us to make it a better place for all of us to live. And so we cannot stop. We have to go on. There is still so much for us to do. You have made this year an awesome year for our division. And while I thank you, I also look forward to continuing the work we have started under the leadership of LGDU. God bless all of you. And please continue to remember your purpose. Continue to keep your passion for service alive. Continue to serve Kiwanians and everyone that we encounter as we go through life. Thank you all so very much. All God's blessing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, LG, for those kind words. And I would say at this point, if it is that we have a chance to do it again, we'll certainly go back for another year or two to continue to be change makers, as we have several impactful projects and a legacy that will forever continue by serving the children of the world. So thank you very much again, LG, for your guidance and for leading Division 23 Central to what it is to be, that Kiwanis is all about making changes and serving the children of the world. So thanks again for all your guidance and leadership in this year.
Thank you, President Paul. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
At this point, I'll now call on our Sergeant at Arms, Kiwanian Zuri.
Thank you, President Paul. Good evening, everyone. This evening, I'm just going to share a light story with you. So this young lady, she went to a wedding with her mother. It was her very first time at a wedding, so she was fascinated by everything at the wedding. So she asked her mother, why is the bride wearing white? So her mother responded, she's wearing white because white is the color of happiness. And today is the happiest day of the bride's life. So she then asked her mother, why is the groom wearing black? I won't answer that for you. I'll allow you to answer for yourselves. So this evening,
Sarge, right?
This evening, I was going to give you all a break considering everything that we went through just now with the rains. But I cannot lose the opportunity to, you know where it's going, right, PD Junior? The last one.
You better do it.
So for the last one, let's go $1,000 for the last one. Grand finale.
Yes, sir.
A grand finale. Oh, but because we're talking about languages, Kiwani and Leighton, that I don't know where that language came from, that surprise language in the chat. Some days ago, those drawings are similar to Egyptian times. I find you $500. Have a good evening, everyone.
Okay, good.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Kiwan and Zuri. So tell us, what does the black represent?
Instead, that's for you to answer.
Morning.
I know, yes, dear. Thank you so very much for that. I will now call on DLG Willie to give us notices and announcement at this time.
Thank you very much, President Paul. Good evening again, fellow Kiwanis and guests. There are a number of notices and announcements. So let me try quickly go through these.
You get that from Willie? Yeah, go on. We'll deal with that after.
Wednesday, tomorrow afternoon at 5 o'clock, Michael Circle K have invited us to their meeting. It's in the chat, the link. I will send it out again later for us. On Friday, St. Hugh's Key Club is having their installation as officers at the school, and that begins at 3:30. And that goes on to about 5 o'clock. And they have extended a special invitation to us. Chairman Dr. Andrew Burton is the guest speaker. On the same afternoon at 5:30, some of us will be heading over to the Police Officers Club where we'll be attending the Division 23 Central Awards ceremony. These awards were to be given out at the initial face-to-face meeting on Saturday gone, but we will be witnessing the awards on Friday. That's Police Officers Club at 5:30. LG may want to speak to that again a little bit later if she has the time. Saturday, October 1, just a few installation, changing the guard for Division 23 East and Eastern St. Andrew installation that's been held at Pegasus at 5:30. Cost is $6,000. On Sunday, October 2, so St. Andrew will be having installation officers. That'll be at the UCC campus. That begins at 4 o'clock. And the cost is $6,000. On Monday, October 3, Eastern Kingston Port Royal will be having an installation at Alhambra Inn, and that begins at 7 p.m. Closer to home, on Saturday, October 8, there'll be a joint installation of Constant Spring, Jamaican Theological Society, Kingston Fab, Friends Across Borders, and Stone Hill, and that will be at 5 o'clock. I think there's a cost for dining, one, and a separate cost for those who are not dining. In respect to interclubbing opportunities, I've already mentioned Michael Circle K, and we'll be there in our numbers as well as St. Steve's on Friday. But tomorrow, after we leave Michael, we'll be going over to New Kingston, where they meet at 6 o'clock. They have a special meeting tomorrow. And on Thursday, we will be going to the train will be dropping us at North St. Andrew's meeting that begins at 6:30. President Paul, those are announcements for the time being. You may just ask LG Rosie if you can just have a word or two regarding the award ceremony on Friday and who will be invited.
Okay, thank you very much, DLG, really, for bringing us the notices and announcements. LG Rosie, could you speak on your award ceremony for this Friday? We would be very happy to hear the details.
Okay, so we are having an award ceremony for the division on Friday to be held at the Police Officers Club. At this time, it is slated to be a face-to-face meeting only. If we are able to Zoom, I will get that information shortly. So I will share it in our chat. Everyone is invited to attend. We will be doing the 3 years awards. So DG Keith wasn't able to give out his award during his year. And so that will be done. DG Debbie will also be giving out the awards that was received at the district convention as well. And for that year, and of course, I will also be doing a few awards at the event. So everyone is invited. Please come out. Let us celebrate each other and the division as we close out. Thank you, Press.
Yes, thank you very much.
5:30.
No, 6.
6 o'clock. Thank you.
6 o'clock. Yes. Police officers.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, LG, for sharing those details with us. I will now call on DP Stewart to give us a thought for the week.
Thank you. Thank you, President Paul. Okay, I just have 2 short ones. The first one, hard work beats talent when talent does not work hard. And the second one is opportunity is dressed in overalls and looks like hard work. And those are my 2 thoughts, President Paul. Thank you.
That's very good. Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, DP Stewart. Well, I want to thank everyone that came out this evening to our last meeting of this administrative year, and to DP Stewart for planning an excellent program each and every week, and also to LGED Desmond for presiding at the start of the meeting until I was able to join. I thank you so very much. At this time, I'm going to ask that we all raise a toast to Kiwanis International and to Jamaica land we love. This meeting of the Kiwanis Club of Kingston is now terminated.
Thank you,
Thank
President.
you. Yes, thank
LG
you very
Rosie,
much,
are you?
LG Desmond.
LG Rosie.